Hello, everybody. We are back with the podcast episode 17, when the main topic is going to be death of traditional media.
Slightly bold proclamation, but we have stats.
Yes, we have gathered a little bit of information to kind of see where the media is moving. Of course, we know that the social media now is the biggest channel or channels, so to say. However, they're old, which are called traditional media channels, that people are kind of looking at how to evolve, or are they actually dying?
From my side, I think we're both mainly talking about news media, but we'll dip into other forms as well.
Indeed, let's start in the weird news. I know the first one. I called it old people leading governmental roles being replaced. So establishments and Democrats, they're clinging to power, so they're refusing to step aside on the real vision of the future. That's how they positioned it. Then the main idea is that, have you heard that AOC was actually replaced in the...
Yeah, I forget the guy's name, but he's very old and he has throat cancer.
Yes, it's Jerry Kobi. So basically, he's a 74-year-old guy who was reportedly hiding his throat cancer diagnosis from the voters. So basically, the main idea is that where did it start? Nancy Pelosi, who is 84 years old, was hospitalized, and while she was hospitalized, she replaced AOC with this old guy.
Oh, yeah. Even aside from that, this is constantly happening. They had Dianne Feinstein, who was literally dying in her post. This is, it's called a gerontocracy. It's when old people rule over young people.
And this is happening not only in US, even though you can see these guys are ancient, 84 years old. Though this is already past pension a very long time. They should rest and really not make decisions.
Now, this is one of the reasons when they have any legislation about the internet, there's some old guy asking the most basic question, like how an IP address works or something.
That's true. So this is one of the things that is happening. I also see it in Lithuania. It happened the same, where some of the older people were like 60. I think there was an average age of like 65 or 67 in the parliament,
yeah,
which is super weird. And then you have all these younger decision makers who want to be in the parliament. I think one guy who was the youngest one, he was like 42 or something. They'll go, wow, it's very young. We're not sure we should allow this guy to sit in the parliament. That was just insane.
Yeah, you're not allowed to run for president if you're not in your mid-30s.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's a really strange rule.
I don't know why they would not allow that. I was reading somewhere that there was a clown party in Finland. Was it Finland or Sweden?
Yeah.
Where a bunch of friends, they just decided to run a campaign and they were dressed up as clowns. Then people found it hilarious and funny and they voted for them. And then they ended up being in the parliament and they were dressed up as clowns. And at some points, they basically started dressing normally and actually making the real decisions. But initially, the main idea when they started this, they were all dressed up as clowns.
Yeah, it was just a trolling statement kind of thing.
Yes, but then it evolves. But they just wanted to make a point that, yeah, the whole thing is a joke.
Yep. In more lighter news, this is something I need your opinion on.
Oh, wow. That was good.
You ever heard of Dopamine Decor?
No.
No. So anyways, this is new trend, and you decide if it's new or not.
Sorry.
It was basically, it's a form of like decorating your house in a very specific way. This goes into the weird things that pop off on like TikTok, where this does start naming things, but you're like, does this need a name? It just sounds like something normal. So it was basically, it went like, born from the TikTok famous dopamine dressing trend, wearing clothes that make you feel good. This philosophy encourages decorating spaces with an emphasis on personal pleasure rather than prescribed aesthetics. While the name might sound like another social media buzzword, it ranks 6th in TikTok's interior trends with over 34 million posts. There's actually compelling science behind why this approach might be exactly what our homes need right now. So, this is from an article by Julia Katsula in Decor magazine.
So is it just do what you like in a way? So does this bring you pleasure? Then just do it. Or do you like this painting? Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically just, I don't want to disparage the trend because giving it a name might make it actually take off, but this is called just having your own style.
Exactly. So does this Something you like? Yes. Oh wow, that's a dopamine decor then, if you like something? I like this TV. It's basically a decor.
I think eventually it'll be formalized into an actual aesthetic. But right now it's like a free-for-all. If you look at these pictures, they're just like colorful and bright, and they look a bit hippie-ish, if I had to describe it. There's a little bit of old-school retro in there as well.
This is what I thought as well, looking at these pictures, that it just looks like a 80s pop style in a way. So it's just a lot of colors.
Some of it very 1970s and 60s.
Oh, I call it ADHD decor because there's just so many colors and you just have to find something to concentrate on.
So yeah, the main idea is that you don't convert any like previous style. Like for example, you don't do modern, or you don't do lush aesthetic, or you don't do vintage. You kind of just mishmash everything into like a collage of colors.
It sounds like just do whatever brings you pleasure. You know?
Yeah, this used to be like artsy kind of. This is what like every house inside Berlin looks like.
Expressionism and also vintage and old school. Yeah, just thrifting. It looks like thrifting.
But yeah, that's my weird trend from the internet for this time around. I have other pieces of news as well. A bugbear of this channel, Elon Musk, has struck again. This time he's attacking Wikipedia.
What?
Yeah. He's decided Wikipedia is like secretive about how their money is spent, so stop donating to them.
I think he's just salty because his donations to OpenAI did not really go very well.
I think he read his own page on Wikipedia. I was like, hey,
I'm upset. I'm not sure this is true.
So he once offered Wikipedia $1 billion to change their name to Wikipedia, which classic. So Elon Musk once offered them $1 billion to buy them as well. But like, it's also, have you ever wondered why the Wikimedia Foundation wants so much money? He said. It certainly isn't to operate Wikipedia. You can literally fit a copy of the entire text on your phone. So what's the money for? So they have editors.
They also have a lot of server costs.
In multiple countries in most known languages.
He cannot do anything with it.
Yeah, he's just salty that there's one place on the internet that isn't being taken over by his bots.
Maybe. But I like how people just go in and just make amendments into some wiki pages. Yeah, I think I contributed to one as well just for fun. They didn't have a Russian translation, and I thought I'm going to go and edit a few words, and then when you edit and submit, they said, well, thank you for the submissions. We're going to review it and kind of fact check this, and then we're going to publish it. I don't know if they did, but basically you can have your own Wikipedia page if you want. And some people would just allow it to be published.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago when I was a teenager, our band wanted to create a Wikipedia page. And we had like release singles and stuff like that, but they were really strict on sourcing by then.
So yeah, I think now it's maybe a little bit easier, but I'm not sure. Maybe they have an AI connected to it now that will not allow it.
They are having trouble removing AI.
Really?
Yeah, they're going really hard on actually having real sourced and written by like actual writers, because you need to know the source. With AI, you can never really know the source.
That's true. Oh my God, I was watching this video about AI inbreeding. Have you heard about that?
Oh yeah. Now when the AI tries to copy other AI stuff and then it just breaks apart.
Exactly. So it's like AI inbreeding, and the guy was giving a parallel. It's like AI inbreeding. What was it breeding by then? It was when some sort of kingdom or dynasty did not want to kind of step away from their bloodline. They would inbreed, and then they would produce people with 6 fingers, and then that's how AI works. He's like, now when AI tries to copy AI and make content from its own production, so then you get a lot of nothing. And he also said that a lot of image generation right now with AI is basically creating these weird loops that it identifies as an image. So for example, it was how would Adam and Eve look? And then it would take the AI from OpenAI, basically the image generation, and then it would feed it to something else. And then it would basically play around with 2 AIs until the image gets so distorted that you would not understand what was the original request or original prompt. And that way, the longer it goes, the more stuff you feed into these AI image generations, the less it understands what was the original request. So this inbreeding creates something completely not relevant.
Yeah, it just tries to keep deviating from the original source, but when the source is already a deviation, there's only other places to go. There's only few other places to go.
Yeah, so the danger was like, what is going to happen when the whole inbreeding is going to continue forever, like for like 3 years, 5 years now? Are we actually going to be able to find the truth and the original source? So that's where, that was a very interesting thing. Another one I read is actually also very positive. It's basically declining teen drug usage. What they found, there was basically a trend in US. They started researching University of Michigan, and they called it up monitoring the future. And the survey basically reveals 50 years of substance abuse among middle and high school, students. And it's dropping steadily, particularly in the past few years. Experts, they created various factors in the downturn, including changing social media habits, public health campaigns, and potentially lasting effects on the pandemic lockdown. So they say because the pandemic, kids or teenagers, they couldn't socialize. So they couldn't socialize, they couldn't get into bad groups or bad friends that would make them use drugs. And the researchers say that the reason is basically very optimistic. Because, well, people now, they said, focus on health, use e-cigarettes, and they basically play video games and use social media as a new drug rather than heavy substance abuse. However, they can see a parallel increase in mental health. So, you're isolated and you don't do drugs. Here's another drug. Use social media.
Yeah, mental health is definitely declining,
right? But the drug use is declining as well.
So I'm saying those two are correlated.
So that was a funny good news. I also found that we don't use drugs anymore.
Huh. Well, I had one piece of news, and I think this ties into the overall theme of declining media, but on a very different level. So, Spotify has just been accused by an investigative journalist of creating tons of music under the same music, under tons of different names by paying a sort of music content farm. And the content farm relinquishes all of the rights to that music to Spotify, so it can make 100% royalties off of it.
Whoa.
And the journalist alleges that this is a way for Spotify to create music that it completely owns and earns all of the money off of, and then pushes it so that to the detriment of other artists.
Don't you think it sounds like a conspiracy theory a little bit?
I mean, there are certain things in here where I'm like, okay, how do you know that? But then there are other things where it's links to the songs, and they're generic songs, and they're like created by other people, and Spotify hasn't denied it to the journalist yet. It's also the journalist is also saying that this is part of like one of the reasons they can keep claiming their numbers of listens are increasing.
Because it's just all AI bot generated.
Yeah. We talked about this before, that like a guy who was running a bot farm and an AI farm to bill for money from Spotify.
Yeah, that one I know. Yeah, that it basically created a bunch of fake AI music and bot traffic into it, but the payouts are so little.
Yeah.
But apparently you can still arbitrage it.
Again, this is one reporter's account, and they haven't they published it on their own Substack, but they have reached out to everybody for a comment. And take it with a grain of salt, but according to them, they're doing this massive operation. 20 people who operate under 500 different names had been uploading music, and a lot of it is generic and recognizable, and sometimes the instruments are swapped out, but it's the same sort of song. And it has multiple different names, and it ends up on all these playlists. And this person created a playlist on Spotify, tracking down how many different songs were the same.
Wow. Spotify starts disappointing me lately. not only with its algorithm, but also they cut the artist's income on listens not so long ago. And I've seen some really popular artists basically open up how much they earned from Spotify, and it's like pennies.
Yeah.
It's like Snoop Dogg said, I earned $2,000 from Spotify last month. It's like, this is just ridiculous.
That's why he's running around doing the Olympic stuff and doing shows with Martha Stewart. That earns more money than having all your music listened to 1 billion times on Spotify.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I have another one, not related. It's called, in China, people are hiring climbing buddies for big money. The more attractive they are, the higher the price. So basically in China, when I was in China, I learned that people retired there when they're 55.
Yeah.
So now a bunch of older people who are 55 plus, they have nothing to do, but hiking becomes a new trend. So they started searching for climbing buddies, and on their Chinese social media, like equivalent of TikTok, which is called Douyin, they basically, all these grandmas start uploading a bunch of videos and requests of if someone wants to join them for hiking. And because, again, the popularity of hiking is increasing, they attributed basically a few factors. First, many retirees enjoy leisure time, right? And they have the financial security, making the outdoor adventures appealing and accessible. The second, they've renewed the focus on health. So they do Tai Chi in the parks. They don't drink because it's not a drinking culture pretty much, especially after the pandemic. People want to kind of focus on fitness and hype more. And the advantages of transportation and social media has made this easier for people to plan trips and share the experiences online. So beyond the whole buzz, this climbing buddy phenomenon has given rise to supportive communities, sparkling friendships, and encouraging physical fitness as older adults continue to hit the trails in a large number. So, and they're basically getting on the media right now. And they say that this is pretty cool, even though it's paid, which it wasn't in Japan where you can pay for a friend. I think in Japan they have a service where you pay someone to hang out with you for a day. Like, is it for hiking? Is it just for chilling? Is it just for drinking? And then you just pay a person to be your friend for a day. So this is pretty much the same thing. You pay for someone to be your climbing buddy. So it's your fitness trainer for hire, pretty much. Do you have anything else?
We can actually move on to the main topic.
Main topic, death of traditional media. Do you have a list of what traditional media is?
Yeah, traditional media is usually comprises of the print, radio, recording music, and recording audio, and audio-visual as well, and movies, series. That's what's usually taught in media studies classes, and then those are like all contrasted against digital media, which is all of our internet and streaming and blah blah blah. It's all got to be lumped together because it changes so quickly.
That's also true. And some of them need to evolve. So I gathered 5. So television, radio, out of home, publishing, and newspapers. So there's a little bit difference in there. And I basically gathered the list of what they are and what are the basically percentages and use cases per each generation. So boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Gen Z, as well as how different generations consume the traditional media right now. And a very interesting fact also from work, you can see that Mediterranean countries in Europe, they most rely on traditional media still, as the Nordic countries or the Central, Western, Eastern Europe, they rely more on digital, which is very interesting phenomenon. So they have identified that the social media dominance basically makes it happen. And maybe I'll take a step back and talk about a little bit about each and every traditional media. So if we take television has declining viewership. The impact of streaming services also has sparks that decline. So the rise of on-demand content has changed completely the viewing habits of people. Also, the way that people have in terms of attention span, people just cannot sit down and just watch TV and have as well 20 minutes of ads in between the movies. So that is completely ridiculous. And I think television became like trash TV now. So the percentage of adults using TV has decreased from 75% in 2023 to 70% in 2024, reflecting a consistent downtrend in the television news consumption, as well as a lot of advertisers, they do not want to pay television for the spots anymore. So there's a decline compounds in the annual rate of 1.5% every year since 2021, indicating the challenges faced by traditional TV networks. So declining viewership, different patterns in viewing based on generation. Then you have advertising revenue that people are not paying anymore for TV ads. So that all basically shows that there's a complete decline in TV. What do you think?
I mean, yeah. On this, just a side digression. It's a story that's illustrative of what the declining ad rates on TV have led to. There was this company that specializes in doing reruns of old shows, but if there was an ad or a product placement, they would swap it out for a newer product. On and on. So you could be watching a rerun, but the posters in the back would suddenly be changed.
It's like product placement.
Yeah. So that was a way to make extra money off of advertising in reruns.
Have you seen, there was, I think it was Argentina or something, or Chile, where they were showing oh my God, what was the movie? There was an original movie, Star Wars, exactly. So they were showing Star Wars, and then when sometimes in Star Wars there was a cutscene where someone wants to take a drink or whatever, they would put a beer ad in it. Have you seen it? And they would call it Cerveza Cristal, and then they would like Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, your father left this for you, and he pitches out to like a fringe, like this transportable fringe, and then they would put the sound behind us. It said Cerveza Cristal, and then it would like come back to the movie. Have you seen? I have to show this to you. This is so funny, and they would do these like integrations back then. But now that, because you said that they're basically having reruns and putting the new ads in it, you reminded me right away. This is so funny. But that makes sense as well to do, right? Because people are still going to be watching it. I don't know what's the demand for it. That would be very curious to look up.
I've never paid attention to a product placement in the back of a TV show.
Yeah, I think me neither.
It seems minimal. It takes a lot of effort for like minimal return.
Would this be in the countries that have traditional media still strong?
Maybe. But I heard this from like an American company doing reruns in like on TV shows. You know those channels that are just like, we're just going to show 4 hours of How I Met Your Mother. Oh no, and somebody's just going to be sitting there like comatose on the couch.
Oh my God. But I feel like this is going to be a little bit of, again, focus on the baby boomers. Because I have here that baby boomers, they heavily rely still on traditional media, because over 90% of baby boomers still watch television, making their primary source of news. They also have a high engagement with radio, about 50% tuning in daily, and also printed newspapers remain significant, approximately 20%, reflecting the lifelong habits formed during the time where all this traditional media was kind of evolving. They just stuck to it. And they also trust in established outlets. So, for example, if you have New York Times or something like that, so that generation tends to distrust the traditional media sources more than the digital ones, often viewing newspapers and television as a reliable source of information. And they're less comfortable with social media being as a news source.
Yeah, I did my master's thesis on this as well, about trust in news media.
What did you discover?
I mean, the main discovery was something really, I was comparing Pakistani news readers versus the news readers here in the Netherlands. And I made some predictions about cultural standards and what things people like rely on, and what things people rely on in terms of the media they consume. And over here in the Netherlands, we have a stronger tradition of trusting news media because it isn't really all that corporate. There's a lot of established newspapers and they can be a bit dodgy and whatnot. But over here, there's more pluralism, and people generally think, hey, the news media is more reliable than getting stuff off of like Facebook or something. And Pakistan is one of those places where the media is absolutely atrocious. It's either owned by a billionaire or the army or some ludicrous mixture of the two. So what happened was Pakistanis had very low level of trust in traditional media, very high trust in alternative media. You can't find the source for this because it's my own study. But they found they found, what we found was that Pakistanis tended to trust alternative media a lot more, but they also had lower viewership of traditional media, especially among the cohort we were studying, which is 18 to 35-year-olds and college educated. The main thing was that cultural attitudes could be like a good predictor. For example, Pakistanis are not very Pakistanis are very like communal. They're not very professional minded in general. It has a low level of professionalism and a low level of trust, whereas the Dutch tend to have a higher level of trust in their own community. So that was one of the major predictors of whether you consumed news or not from traditional sources or alternative sources.
And say that there's also that behavior because of lack of digitalization or digital maturity.
We were studying college-educated kids who were ostensibly on the internet a lot on both sides. That was to eliminate the digitalization factor. Pakistanis tend to use Facebook so much also. You have no better. But it's one of those things where I wanted to eliminate the entire idea of, this might be an education gap, which there's a massive education gap between Pakistanis and Dutch people, of course. So I only studied college students. These are people who are ostensibly supposed to be media literate, and we only wanted to find out the cultural thing. Fair. So, high level of trust correlates towards a higher level of trust in the media, of course, and a lower level of trust does not correlate in the same way. It often leads you to alternative media. Yeah, so you end up trusting the opposite of traditional media because it often markets itself as, I'm alternative. I'm not like the mainstream. So the distrust in traditional media is directly correlated with that kind of marketing tactic.
I also read what you just said, that a lot of these traditional media, they couldn't evolve. So they're losing a lot of money and a lot of trust because they couldn't just switch into the alternative or, let's say, digital media. So, for example, you have a very, let's say, New York Times or the Post or something, right? If they wouldn't be online, they would die, right? If they wouldn't be running social media channels with the short news, they would also not really survive. Now they have subscriptions to keep them alive somehow because they wouldn't be able to survive if they would stick to newspapers, radio, and kind of all this publishing stuff, or TV even, like maybe some sort of news reporters who have sources.
Yeah, but digitalization happened a long time ago, right? The other problem is that a lot of newspapers just can't compete with the speed that traditional journalism requires. Verify sources, do this, do that, run it through a very specific filter, and then you're also liable if you make any mistakes. And a lot of alternate media doesn't have that. They can rapid fire all sorts of either nonsense or very good reporting. It really is a mixed bag, And again, I'm saying this as someone who relies on both alternative media and traditional media for my own sort of work and my own sort of news consumption. What I often find is that people also just don't like the style that traditional media presents itself in. There's a very formal sort of thing. If you've ever written a news article for a major publication, what you'll find is that they all have a very set way of doing things. First paragraph needs to be what, where, and how, who, The second, there needs to be a exact amount of spacing before the end. The end needs to be a proper conclusion, but all the information needs to be present here, 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 and here. There's a real essay-like format, and I don't think it vibes with younger people who want something a bit more, something but more dopamine inducing.
Fair. Talking about dopamine, I have identified a few things of how the younger generation consumes or how the switch happens. But before I go into that, I want to go through the radio out of home and publishing, some of the things of why it is declining, and then how that consumption by the younger generation happens, and also maybe a little bit of how the boomers think. So radio shifting to digital. So a lot of traditional radio, they do have loyal listeners. They basically, I listen to this radio station for such a long time, so therefore they continue listening. However, the adaptation happens on the radio much more because now everyone has what? A podcast, live streaming, they have shorts. Why? Because the consumption of that media changed. So the desire for authenticity in terms of engagement and like basically human attitudes. So the younger generation, they prioritize the authenticity in news. Therefore, for them, being this informal kind of consumption is very important because it is happening where? On TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook.
I'm going to slightly fight back against that. Everybody says they want authenticity in news and they want this, but but if you're authentic but you disagree with them, they'll call you biased. They'll call you unprofessional.
But that is a difference. I think you have to pick your way of delivering the message.
What I find often is these comments about you need to be authentic, you need to be this, you need to be, or other places it's like you need to be objective, you need to be this. It's all bullshit people often raise up when they disagree with you. They'll call you inauthentic if you're saying something they don't like. They'll call you unprofessional. It's like a thing you just throw at a person when that's not really what's happening. You're just trying to shoot the messenger. There's so much about like, oh, you're fake news, this is fake news, that's fake news. It's often coming from somebody who just disagrees with the viewpoint being espoused, you know? And yeah, objectivity exists and there are some very biased sources online. But most of the time when I hear this thing about this person's bias, that person's bias, I'm just like, they just didn't say what you wanted them to say.
But you're talking about behavior right now.
I'm saying that it's often kind of a useless thing whether something's authentic or not, you know? It's a thing we assume and a lot of people say they want. But oftentimes what people say they want isn't how they act, you know?
This is why I love analytics. I always say, what do you do? I'm like, I really tell what people actually do online rather than what they say.
Yeah.
However, I looked into this. So what you just described, I put them under the technology integration of whatever. If it's radio, switching to podcasting. If it's television, switching into streaming services, right? So I put it into that people use now multiple platforms, right? So on average, Gen Z consumes news from about 4 different social media platforms weekly. So this multi-platforming approach reflects on the comfort of technology and preference. So this might be, I didn't like what these guys saying on TikTok. I'm going to go on Instagram because on Instagram, it might be different demographics that they're focusing on. We know that boomers use Facebook, millennials use Instagram, and Gen Zers, they use TikTok.
You might want to look at these stats as well because proportion that used each social network for news in the last week broken down by age, and the highest users of Facebook were 25 to 34.
Where? Which country?
This is Reuters doing an overall analysis, UK.
Okay.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, 25 to 34 still on Facebook using it for news. And I can understand why, because in 2016 I definitely was using it for news. Because there's all these professional platforms on there, and then you can also have these commentators. You can mix and match them and try to look at the contrast between what they're doing. But again, I'm a freak and a junkie, so I did that. It's my spare time.
Millennials becoming boomers on Facebook.
Yeah, but 18 to 34 is still higher than 35 plus in the UK at least. So these are hard to make completely, it's hard to make a complete generalization about everyone. Similarly, YouTube, younger people much higher.
And then what's that age on YouTube?
18 to 24, 32% on YouTube. 29% for the 25 to 34-year-old demographic. And for anybody above 35, it was 26% on YouTube. Lots of WhatsApp groups, but not as many as Facebook and YouTube. Facebook Messenger, half of what WhatsApp was. Very few from Twitter, which is, that's probably messed. That's a niche. It is a niche platform. People forget how few people are actually on Twitter, despite how it dominates the news cycle. And it dominates the news cycle because all the journalists are on it and all the political figures are on it. So, and it's an easy delivery method. But yeah, statistically, there's a very low percentage on Twitter.
So this is millennials pretty much that are still on Facebook. I have a summary as well about traditional media. So you right now had more of a digital media, and I have the traditional overview, and I have it breaking down by TV consumption, and radio and print media. And then I had a look at each generation. So for example, more than 90% of baby boomers watch TV daily or weekly, The Generation X is 87%, millennial 75%, and then Gen Z 26%. So it feels like millennials who got the best of both worlds of TV and going into the digital transformation, and they are basically still a little bit here, a little bit there and scattered. But Gen Z, radio consumption by Gen Z 23%, print media 10%. When it comes to millennials, TV consumption 74%, radio consumption 55%, and print 10%.
TV consumption is still high.
It is still high. Gen X, 87 watch TV, 62 radio, 15 print. So print is really falling down. However, you see a very, very big decline when it comes to Gen Z who were bored of a phone in front of their face or in their hands. So I think that's where it really breaks the whole, what's the next generation is going to be doing. So I have also outlined some engagement and attitudes, right? Because basically the behavior is super different. So the search behavior changes specifically for Gen Z because many young people, they use social media as a primary search for information. Yeah, similar to how older generations might have used Google, for instance. 14% of Gen Z reported using TikTok to research significant news events. Then content preferences as well, because the younger generations, in comparison to every other generation now, particularly Gen Z, are mostly engaged with video games and streaming content. About 26% of Gen Z cite gaming as favorite entertainment activity compared to just 10% of millennials and 3% of boomers. So yeah, we're talking about digital maturity and how to spend time. It is previously people would read newspapers for jokes, and now because they have this multi-platform consumption, right? Because you have all these different channels that you can use. I totally see why you would not want to add a traditional media as a Gen Z. Millennials, 35 plus, which you mentioned on Facebook, but did it have Instagram as well? Or was it only Facebook?
It had Instagram as well. Instagram was relatively lower, but somewhere around where Twitter was.
Okay, because I would set up they could put it into like Meta, because Meta is both Facebook and Instagram. So that could be the thing.
Instagram was 24% compared to Twitter's 16% in the 18 to 24 demographic. So, Snapchat was also studied with very few people in Snapchat at the lowest by all rates. But I think Snapchat is very informal.
Also very niche.
Very niche, yeah. It shows up a lot, but I don't think that as many people use it daily as, your YouTubes or your Facebooks.
I have a question. When the last time, do you remember a poster you've seen that you remembered when you saw it on the street?
Yeah, but
was it a digital, or was it digital poster, or was it it actually sticked on something?
Stuck on.
Yeah. So this is actually the category which is called out-of-home advertising.
Yeah.
And there's a digital transformation happening. For example, on some metro stations, you see the screens integrated into the wall. And now you can basically, as a poster, pretty much advertise your event or whatever your product. So it's the out-of-home digital transformation. They started calling it digital out-of-home, where the out-of-home advertising is evolving with the integration of digital billboards into interactive displays on the streets, while the traditional static billboards are still in use. However, it's not really an increasing, but a decreasing trend. So the digital formats now allow for real-time updates and targeted messaging. As well, challenges from digital media, the growth of online advertising also continues to challenge the out-of-home effectiveness, because you cannot really target people with that, because it's mass media in a way. Yes, it doesn't matter if it's digitally switching or not. You estimate how many people walk through that specific street or that metro station or that train station, which again, you lose control, which is why they're stepping away a little bit as well.
There's the pros and cons to that, you know? There's something about like modern digital advertising which is so honed in on this is you as a person and we made this ad specifically for you.
Yeah.
That all the advertisements used to have to take like swings, you know, massive swings to attract people. And sometimes it wouldn't be geared towards one person. It'd be like, you know what, this ad is good enough that anybody who sees it, they'll want to come to this concert or this or that. And you don't know who you can get. You could be mass targeting. And now with like very specified targeting, what you get is you create a small niche, you know, and only they show up for like an event or something.
Yeah, but that gives you the data you need, right? Because then you can really target the people. That's why I am not a fan of TV at all. I haven't watched TV for probably 13 years. Seriously, not a single time, maybe once. And I don't know even why. And I don't remember what was it. I don't remember when the last time I was listening to radio that was not online, because everyone's switching to podcasting.
Yeah.
Out of home advertising, I remember some of them, and just because I recognized it. I think it was like a Netflix TV show somewhere. I've seen it in Amsterdam metro station. But when it comes to like publishing in newspapers, nothing. I don't remember when the last time I was holding a newspaper in my hand. And this is where I kind of put myself into this millennials, where we were on this brim of shift towards the digital.
But yeah, I think you're more digital than most even, you know? You're a bit on the higher digital side.
Yeah, if it's like real life, it's not real. And you're a black mirror in real life. Yeah, but the whole this, like, I think it's an engagement parts. I think when I was looking through all this research, that's the main, for millennials, the biggest shift is engagement with podcasts, because millennials are more open to new formats such as podcasts, and we still, in their research, value the traditional news, particularly older millennials who are more still kind of trained, well, not trained, but had an example from their parents. And I'm literally pulling this out from the American Media Press Institute.org.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who did this research on, you know, how the shift on the millennial side happened. That basically boomers, Gen X and millennials, we were the breaking point of digitalization. And now as the new generation who were born in 1997 until 2012, these guys, nothing, 10%, 20% of traditional media. They don't leave the house. They're not addicted to drugs, and they are basically not leaving their homes and just consuming anything that is digital. And what is as well a big point is that the variety of media, because previously if you wanted to listen to radio, you needed to have a radio by itself, like standalone. Now you can listen to a podcast on 10 different channels, 10 different sources, and with video podcasting like we do.
There was a tiny blip. You remember when before phones were smartphones? They used to have FM transmitters, FM receivers actually. So there was this tiny blip where like people would be listening to the radio on like their non-smartphones.
I remember I had this Chinese phone that I could pull out an antenna and I could even watch TV on it.
In our case, it wasn't that complicated. It just had one. But yeah, so people used to put it on and go to sleep like we do with podcasts a lot of the time.
Yeah. No, but I remember there was a moment, but I was not that tech savvy. I remember you had to send an SMS or something or subscribe to things.
Oh, damn. Some of these just had it inbuilt. I remember like, I bet like the radio people were happy for a second that they would die. As in, smartphones happened and everybody's on YouTube or on Snapchat or freaking WhatsApp.
You have to eat, you're going to do my Siemens, otherwise I'm not going to, yeah, it's funny. So basically, what do we know? That traditional media such as newspapers, publishing, out of home, radio and television, the most promising ones are radio and digital out of home, because those are the ones that have a, it's like you listen to things, but you change the sources where you listen to things. When it comes to radio, And out at home, you just don't have to hire anyone to put a billboard, like a static billboard. So you just have to connect the screen, and then you can kind of, with a push of a button, change that. So this is how some of these evolved. But TV, I don't think that TV as well, like looking at the consumption and the revenue, that every year, like 5% decline in TV because boomers are passing away. And then you have a decline in like in revenue. So television is dying out a little bit. And also you have all these streaming platforms that people use in selective viewing. I think that's where the behavioral change is happening.
When it comes to Gen Z, daily internet activity usually involves social media. 50% of Gen Z say they get their news daily from social media. From streaming services, 23% get it daily, and the numbers decline from there, as they usually do. And online only news sites is 13%, whereas local newspapers is down by like 5% daily readers in the Gen Z demographic. Very few people using them less than once per month, which is like 11%. Surprisingly, Gen Z not into daily podcasts, but a few times a week is like 12%. A few times a month is 14% of Gen Z.
I'm so curious, like what makes Gen Zers watch TV or read a newspaper?
I think if your parents have a TV
or a newspaper,
subscription, you just gotta pick it up once in a while. My mom got me a subscription to Business Insider, I remember. She just wanted me to be like at least somewhat informed.
I have a subscription to, I think it's actually Business Insider, but I don't remember, and Wall Street. So two of them, I have a subscription. I open them maybe once a week.
I would love to have like a newspaper subscription or a TV freaking, what's it called, network package. But I keep moving houses every few years. So I'm like, this is never gonna last.
Well, that's one, but then TV, man, you could just put anything. You put a, fire burning in the background for 10 hours, and that can be your, background noise, not some CNN.
No, but I like the idea of a network actually putting out stuff and you seeing it instead of you choosing it, out of a menu. Really? So sometimes going like past places. Okay, this is a pet peeve of mine. I think streaming culture ruined television.
Of course, because they had to evolve, and then you have also different channels.
I'm talking about the quality and content. That's different. It ruined shows, in my opinion. Because what happens now is you can never just have a TV show end properly. Everything has to have that cliffhanger that gets you to click on the next episode right then and there, so you binge watch it.
Isn't that just how like channels evolve or how production evolves?
That's them try to boost their numbers and at the detriment of the art.
But the TV is never going to have that because no one's watching TV. So creating these hooks for boomers might not even work.
But our attention is that you needed an entire season to find out if your viewership was worth it. So they would give a chance to these shows. And Netflix cancels a show after one season, whereas back in the network TV days, they would run them for three seasons. It'd be like, you know what? We're going to see if it catches on. And this sort of bottom line culture of everything needs to have an audience built instantly, otherwise there's no point. Otherwise our future projections don't make sense. It causes it causes very good shows that are really sort of like not great for normies, for example.
Sounds like you're protecting TV.
I'm protecting the art that was produced by TV. Not TV itself. This could happen on streaming services if they had the courage to let shows run for longer.
Or the money. I guess it's all about the money, right?
All about the money. It's all about like instantly we need to get our stockholders to understand we're like a legit network, making good shows and getting big numbers and making bold decisions. So back in the TV days, there were shows like, did you ever watch Community?
No.
Okay. That was a show that was never super popular to be a ratings hit, but it kept being picked up by different channels because it had enough of a niche audience to keep it carried through. And it was a good show. It's a good show. I'll defend it till then, until it got picked up by Yahoo, and they did like a few seasons that were really terrible. That said,
That said, I'm looking at the definition of Generation X, and you might fit that. 'Cause Gen X born 1965 to 1980.
Not at all. But I'm a cusper.
You're older millennial. However, you
Millennial. No, millennials is 1980s to
96.
yeah. How dare you? You're like a younger millennial.
Because it sounds like you're into balanced consumption. Gen X exhibits the traditional media.
Yeah, you misunderstand. You know what? I think the convenience of streaming is excellent. It's looking excellent. But here's the problem. It's led to a very sort of like fast-paced, disposable sort of culture of producing media. My point isn't even that like, oh, I would prefer to sit down on the TV and flick through stuff. I just miss the fact that TV shows were given a bigger chance to survive.
I mean, yes. However, they have to evolve because what? Behavior is changing of viewers.
I don't even think this is based on behavior. A lot of people complain when shows are just canceled out of nowhere. This is based on a very particular business mindset that's arisen from like tech circles and from Silicon Valley, which is different from the publishing industry.
Do you think that would happen anywhere? Like not specifically when it comes to TV shows?
I think it happens in every industry if you're talking about the mindset that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Which is this idea of if a thing isn't instantly successful, we slashes, you know? If a thing isn't perfectly engineered to hit people's brains in a certain way, it doesn't matter what the quality is. There's that reliance on real-time data, data fetishism, I would call it. Not like actual usage of the data to be like, okay, let's look at this in a very logical manner. So sort of to be like, well, the data says we can make garbage content that'll get a lot of clicks, so we're just going to keep making that.
But then publishing in newspapers, they decline. But in my understanding, then that's because if we look at television, radio, and out of home, it's visual and audio. And then when it comes to publishing in newspapers, it's just, you have to read. So this is really a specific way of consuming content where you cannot be so creative, right? Because the attention span now is like 3 seconds on average. Shows they have to have a cliffhanger, as you mentioned. So, and that you cannot do that with newspapers and publishing.
Yeah, you can. But at the same time, publishing has its own versions of that. Clickbait literally exists because of this.
Yes, but then
that's always existed, by the way. It's nothing new. The headline is usually just enough context to keep you reading.
Yes, but it's very also, again, it needs specific behavior. As we already discussed, that some generations, they have a very, very different way of behaving when it comes to like content preference, right? So the content preference is moving away from reading into like visual and audio, right? So people need fast moving pictures. And also they cannot concentrate for longer than 2.5 seconds. So therefore you have this engagement and attitude change, content preferences, as well as basically.
There is that, but it's also, I think attention spans have gotten weird. They haven't gotten more limited. Because there are YouTube videos out there with like millions of views that are like 4 hours of someone talking.
That's true.
There are podcasts being uploaded every day like this one that are like an hour and over. Some podcasts being 3 hours at a time. And the attention spans have gotten strange. They're very selective now. People don't spend much of them reading, of course. But from video, sometimes people do marathons of like Let's Plays. They watch Twitch streamers from dusk till dawn.
So what do you think? Is it more that the traditional media just needs to evolve, or some traditional media is declining, or is it that there's just too much choice now, so people choose different channels in the media?
I think your consumption usually reveals with your attention span. It doesn't build it. Like some people prefer shorts and they'll just click like 1,000 shorts in a row, just watching like YouTube Reels or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok. And then there are other people who, like myself, who like a long video essay about something. yesterday, I don't know, Alex was like, what are you watching? But this is like a scientific breakdown of the Hot One sauces, huh?
3.5 hours. They're actually not now value units, you know? And she's like, this, and he looked at me and he's like, this is some stoner nonsense. And you're watching. But yeah. So in your conclusion is that everyone picks their own poison in a way.
Yeah, I think it just reveals what you like internally want at that moment, and it doesn't have to stay that way. Another thing is just that when you're frustrated, you can't focus. So that's mental health is also an issue. You might have ADHD, even, you know. There's all these sorts of factors that involve, and it's dismissive to say that, oh, everyone's just looking at TikTok short form content.
No, it's not about that.
But simultaneously, we also talk about the rise of podcasts happening simultaneously, and they are long. Sometimes come out 3 times a week. So I think there's something being missed there. It's easy to be reductive and say, oh, everyone's attention span has gone to hell. But then if you're listening, I mean, I listen to at least, if I had to put it together, at probably 6 hours of podcasts a week, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's not on a work day. That's by my own choice. I go walking outside and I'll listen to my daily outputs.
I'm more on the video. I really like listening to people just like we do who record, and also I can see what, like, how they behave, you know, who's the guests and how they show themselves. So for me, it's also video, audio mostly. So YouTube would be my preference. But that is, again, not excluding the fact that radio is switching, right, to podcasting. TV has a decline in revenue and a decline in viewership as well. And the majority was the boomers, that no one wants to invest in it. And publishing in newspapers, they're the ones who are struggling the most because no one is actually buying print anymore. That's where they try to stimulate their sort of business with subscription services and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the other problem is primarily that print media is also very insular. It's not just this issue of print media is dying because it's just, you know, old or whatnot. They all tried to pivot to digital, and some have been more successful, some have been less successful. Something like the Daily Mail does not have a subscription, but they're so good at clickbait, they're considered one of the most popular sources online. And they're a terrible newspaper, but still, they've sort of mastered perform.
Yeah, they use meta algorithms.
Yeah. No shade on them in terms of their work ethic, just their journalistic ethic. But so there are places for that to happen. A lot of these, remember the era when like BuzzFeed just went like absolutely haywire and was like doing all of this stuff. They had their own investigative line as well, and at the same time they were putting out listicles and so on. That trend collapsed, and they were a new company that found this new way to do stuff. And it's just that it's happening so fast. The changes in how people read happen so fast that newspapers can't keep up. Which is why subscription is often really good for them. Setting up Substack is often really good for them. The journalists themselves building their own profile and going solo is usually really good for them. Like so many people left a lot of those legacy newspapers. And the other thing is a lot of the legacy newspapers just don't have as much trust, because what they had to do to survive in this changing environment is be bought out by billionaires like Jeff Bezos.
Elon Musk.
He hasn't bought any newspapers as far as I know.
No.
He bought Twitter, though.
What? That's pretty much your digital media.
Yeah. But the other thing is an issue of media literacy. This is something I keep coming back to, which is it's not that something doesn't vibe with people, it's that they don't know how to read it. Right? I keep having this argument with people about, where did you read that? And they'll open up like the news source and they're like, see, it's like a traditional media source, blah, 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 or something. And I'm like, that's an editorial. There's a difference between an editorial and a news report and an investigative journalism piece. These are 3 different types of traditional media formats. And the thing is, on an editorial, you are stating your opinions. You are not making a informed argument. You can, but you don't have to. And often editorials are written by non-researchers. So that understanding completely evades a lot of people, So they often lose trust in media because of that as well. I mean, there's valid reasons to lose trust in media. We've covered it like 2 weeks ago, how the Washington Post blocked its own journalists from making their endorsements for the president. And yeah, that's a clear sign of bias. Like Jeff Bezos put his fist down there. Those reasons are there as well, but there's also this other thing going on where people just don't know how to read the news, so they don't read the news. And then the news gets worse and worse, and then it gets bought out by like whoever has the money to buy it.
Or they have to also switch to where people are going to read it more, which is digital. They're like, oh, this is something, because I think on social media, I never seen someone saying, oh, this is, if I look at the carousel on Instagram, yes, I have a few news agencies that I subscribe to, and they never say, is it editorial or is it investigative journalism? They just state something, and then that's what I, read.
Yeah. There's also a point, this was a point made by Adam Curtis, a documentary filmmaker. He usually makes these documentaries where he narrates over them and talks about different social issues. His latest, as of the recording of this podcast, his latest documentary was called Trauma Zone. And there is no narration in it. There's barely any explanation. It's just series of clips during the downfall of Russia. Mm-hmm. And people asked him, like, why is it so different? And he said, I have a suspicion that nowadays people don't like having the information mediated by another person. They like to see a thing and form their own conclusions. So this documentary, I minimized the amount of input that I actually put in. It's like 8 episodes or something, an hour long each, and just clips of different events from like the downfall of Russia with no narration, very little context given. And I sort of agree with his main ethos there that the news media used to be mediators between us and the events, us and the people that they're talking about. And now people would much rather like to look up the video as it's happening. They would like to see the clips for themselves and say, oh, okay, this is what happened. I'll make my own mind up about it. Where that gets lost is often in very complex events where you do need someone who has some expertise to break things down. And then the other side of that is when people with no expertise start weighing in, and then they're like, well, this looks fake because, this person's hand or that person, I'm a body language expert. And if that person smiled at some point and you're like looking at grainy footage, be like, I don't see it. But, that sort of thing has both positives and negatives. It's a different approach to media consumption. It's a different approach to mediation of media.
I think the consumption part is very interesting, because then I can imagine, in my head visualizing if you show documentary like that, for example, on a streaming service or Netflix, or if you're going to show that on TV, or you're going to show that, I don't know, like on Facebook or TikTok, like how the perception of the same thing is going to change.
That's the thing though, right?
Because you have different audiences and different channels.
Previously, it was the opposite problem, right? Someone else was constantly choosing what you got to see. And that had its downsides as well. And now we're like very freedom-minded, and we're like, everything should be your own choice. Every little thing you choose what to click on. But it creates a sort of gap. Constantly giving people what they would most gravitate towards often produces the most short-form, snappy, fast food-style media.
It's also selective kind of listening or selective viewership, right? I just watch what confirms my biases, and that's what I'm gonna stick to.
Yeah, because you don't end up really challenging people. This happens so often on news podcasts or news channels and things like that, where people just kind of go, become audience captured. They go after what their audience wants, and they start changing their views. Their audience disagrees with them. They like this happened with the Joe Rogan a while back, where he came out and said, "Oh, I'm supporting RFK Jr. for president." His own most hardest fans were just roasted him on Twitter to the point where he went, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to do my mind a little bit," and went back to supporting Trump again. The people become audience captured, and this is why one of the big discussions that always happens is like cancel culture and stuff like that. You're afraid of the audience talking back to you.
Yeah, well, you have to, you're a business, right? If you completely dominate a specific channel, in our case, we're not talking about like digital or traditional, even though we can, right? It's like Tucker Carlson was on TV for a very long time.
But then he privatized slot on Fox News, one of the most watched news channel in America.
Right, so he cannot allow himself to be disagreed with. Like, he has to say what everyone wants to hear because that's what sells. So I totally understand why some of the streaming platforms or radio, they have to keep their audience. Otherwise, they're just not gonna, work. They're gonna collapse.
This has always been the case, but it's never been this fast, It's never been like you say something 5 minutes later, a million people are complaining and even sending emails. People used to have to send letters, man.
And now it's a feedback loop. You have to really,
So the adjustment happens fast and the pivoting happens really fast. And like, there's no time for the audience to cool down. There's no time for the guy who made the statement to cool down. They both have to either give in or become like completely arrogant about it.
Crisis communication.
Yeah, like it happens so instantly. And the other thing is, previously, if you couldn't just send an angry tweet at someone, you had to sit down, pick up a pen, write a letter, mail it, hope you had the right stamps. And back in those days, people would send thousands of letters or something like really atrocious happened. Nowadays, it's very quick and like, you're not even sure if it's a momentary reaction, if this person has thought it through.
Yeah, just rage.
Yeah. There's a lot of like rage that would have otherwise not become rage had like not 1,000 other people instantly supported it.
Well, that's more of like ease of use of the digital media.
Yeah. But that's the two-way communication problem. But the getting back to one of the original things, which we were talking about, the mediation issue. When you don't have people doing proper agenda setting and like giving you proper information. I've got two examples. Brett? This is this like shocked me when I first read it in 2016. After the Brexit vote, a lot of Britain Googled what is the EU.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about.
It's critical thinking, man. But this is a problem of education as well. However, other media they had made an assumption, I guess, educated guess that everyone knows what's EU.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. There's the mediator can stop that and be like, "Hi, this is the thing we're talking about. Here's the history of it, and blah blah blah, and this and this and that and that." But when it's so unprofessional and it's just a unfounded rage, another example from this same era was like this woman was on Question Time. This is when the digital broke through to the traditional media, right? This woman was on Question Time, and they were asking people why they wanted to vote to leave the EU. And this woman was like, "Oh, I was very pro EU, but when I came across this internet article, and it said the EU is stopping us from bringing in bendy bananas. They demand that we only bring in straight, complete bananas." Yeah, and it was nothing. There's no law like that, right? But this person had their brain rot, and like there's three levels of what's wrong with that. One, who is saying that? What EU statute? Please tell us. Two, this is obviously false. You could double check it, Google it. Why are you getting your news from the internet? And third part is, this is the thing that made you want to leave the EU? This is the biggest problem on your mind?
Bananas, very important.
So when the algorithm decides, sometimes really trivial nonsense floats up to the top and becomes really important. Whereas back in the old days, for good and for bad. Trust me, there are bad reasons that somebody else can set the agenda. But there used to be somebody going like, this thing is important, so can we please talk about that?
My understanding, it's not a media problem. I think it's a problem as well of like critical thinking in general of the population, because you can have any media source or channel. It's just a tool.
Yeah, but I also think algorithms incentivize this. They're built to. Like, what is CRO? right?
Yeah, but the businesses, they play the game of engagement, and the users, which is us, we have the responsibility to choose information, right? And it doesn't matter where is it coming from.
But there's so many instances where critical thinking would not have saved me. You know, you can be a very good critical thinker and still be fooled by medical misinformation. You know, if somebody made a very convincing argument as to why fluoride shouldn't be in the water, I'd be like, "Oh well, that makes sense. I'm not a doctor. I don't know that stuff." We need to have some humility, you know. No, I don't know the billions of things you need to know at every point, you know, to make a decision. That's why we used to rely on experts, and nowadays, like any dumbass with a with a phone is an expert suddenly, you know. And sometimes even these so-called experts are like picked up because they're like they've positioned themselves against the other experts, and they get boosted up. Like all these podcasts were having a lot of these some geology skeptics, archaeology skeptics who just think everything is like aliens, you know?
So I haven't practiced geology for 75 years. However, let me tell you,
Yeah, what do you think about it? I don't know anything about archaeology or geology. I could be easily fooled by that, you know?
that's true.
Maybe not the aliens bit, because that part I'm thoroughly researched.
But does it matter which media it's coming through?
It does matter in the sense that it takes a long time to do a full production, whereas it takes zero time to do an internet show. So there's all these hoops that you run through. There are broadcast standards. There are all these regulations on what you can and can't show. And that's not to say garbage doesn't show up on TV. I have a million examples of that as well. It's just harder for garbage to show up on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, and I don't want to defend traditional TV, you know, as someone who doesn't watch much of it. But I do remember myself watching like a stupid moon hoax conspiracy theories when I was a kid online, and feeling very convinced by them. But with like my mom comes in, listens to a bit, and starts laughing, and I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Totally believes in the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to get finagled by this stuff, and especially if you're like, if you're expecting entertainment, but somebody starts pushing you in an ideological direction. That happens really slowly.
That's true. Well, I like the fact that, of course, you have to filter through, but it's just not convenient. Like, it's just maybe the evolution of traditional media into digitalization has to happen faster. Maybe that's the way, because I'm just looking at from a data perspective and like business perspective and engagement. I'm like, okay, so engagement's going down. They're not evolving very quickly. It takes them longer to produce the news. So our behavior changes. So we need different types of media. We need different channels, different approach to how they present information. And that is not happening. So this transformation is what actually, basically is dragging the traditional media down.
But I so disagree in that what happens is the algorithms are specifically designed to like produce this effect. And they're often designed to make us stupider because guess what? They think something long form or something more challenging or whatever is not as exciting. So it keeps pushing stuff that's very stupid right into your feed because that's easy to digest. You'll stay on longer if you have small bits of it, but thousands of them.
Yeah, engagements and then advertising space cells. No, absolutely. I highlight this one story where it's about the media, not the message. So, for example, if someone message you on Instagram or anyway Facebook, they would say, "I'll find you and I'll heal you." You know, like haha, block, right? And that's it. You never pay attention that it came to you specifically.
Yeah.
But if you get
a letter,
letter with the same message anonymously, that's going to be concerning.
Well, I mean, I'd be equally concerned if the Facebook message that was sent also had my address in it. You see what I mean? If I receive a letter, that's because they know my address. That's what's freaking me out.
Right, but this is in both cases. So it's about the message is one thing, but the media, that is also very important.
Yeah.
So that's where I guess the boomers and the older generation, they stick to what they know, right? The creatures of habits. and they stick to the TV and the radio.
No, there's that definitely, but it's also a case of audience proliferation. Like, I would not have a particularly good time on like Snapchat. It's not for me, you know. A lot of older people also see a lot of apps like that as well. They're like, oh, this is like young people's stuff. Let them do their thing, you know. And if Facebook took a while, but it captured the boomers as well. You know, they joined, and then the most famous news sources on there are also like catering to boomers, and then suddenly, you know, boomers everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's about who gets to a place first and establishes the tone, and whether that tone changes or accommodates. Facebook made an active choice to court everyone.
That's why I like Reddit.
Yeah. No, I mean,
It's in the name. It's Reddit, right? Reddit.
well, in case somebody's like, wow, that was your little story about Brexit and people Googling stuff, that's just a one-off thing. I've got some news for you today. So, search interest for did Joe Biden drop out is spiking on election day. So most people didn't even know Joe Biden dropped out, and they were registered to vote, and they had to go vote.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is it about speed or is it just, again, stupidity?
I'm pretty sure back in the old days, you had someone in your life communicating to you about the news.
It's so weird when you have such quick access to information. Right now, you still are clueless of what is going on. But it might be just ignorance with intention.
I mean, some of it is just there are extraordinarily stupid people all over the world who do insane things, you know? And they're just more visible right now. And usually you didn't have Google. Back then you didn't have Google, so they couldn't search it and you wouldn't find out about it, you know?
I was seeing somewhere a guy said, remember the times when you have an argument and you would discuss it for an hour because you did not have a chance to pull up your phone and check or fact check something? So you'd actually have to get into a library and research something to get your answer. And now you're like, is our banana straight? Yes. Our banana is not straight. Yes. So you can really, this confirmation bias, that's also trouble. But that's more about not the tool. It's more about the message.
Well, I'm gonna now be on your side. It isn't about the tool, because I think people did that all the time anyway. And people put on the whatever channel they trust. People put on subscribe to whatever news source they like. To me, people have always been these sort of thin-skinned creatures who don't like to hear too much disagreement, and nobody actually cares about the truth. They care more about emotional validation.
Fair.
Yeah.
Cannot disagree with that.
I think that's how people have always been. But occasionally, you would have to run up against somebody who would disagree with you. Nowadays, the algorithm's like, what keeps them on here?
So what did we learn?
Yeah,
Pick a place to what you like.
also just make your algorithm work for you. Not like be conscious that it's trying to make a choice to divert you to certain places.
And second thing, I would say critical thinking. Question what you see online.
Yeah, of course. And like, I don't ascribe to this idea that people are so easily like brainwashed. I think they can be easily misled. I've been easily misled all throughout my life, a number of things, Yeah. But I think if they're willing to make the effort, they can just be conscious of these things and slip in and out and be like, okay, I haven't been getting my news from here. I should get it from here a little bit as well. I made active choices to sign up for pages with competing viewpoints just so I knew what the hell everyone was talking about.
You have to be open-minded. That's what you're saying.
Be open-minded. But open-minded, I hate that word now. Because it's used by people trying to sell you bullshit. I mean, why don't you be open-minded?
Well, you can be open-minded to...
As try to from the opposite or something.
You can try different channels. For me, some cases, and I think it's also quite a privilege because I could read when there was some plane crash, I think in Ukraine, I could read Lithuanian news, Russian news, and like Dutch news, and also English. Not a single one overlapped. Everyone had their own opinion. Everyone, I think that when that happened, 2016 or 2016. Yeah, so something like that. I think that was the pivot point in my life when I'm like, this all makes no sense. Everyone has their own narrative. I'm like, I do not know what to stick to. And because that was such a largely discussed thing, I could just sit there and listen in every, like, outing. Like anytime I was, going to socialize, this topic was brought up. And as I was like in all these international groups or local groups, it was very different. And that's where I thought, there's no way I'm going to trust anything I see online anymore.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where is it coming from.
But that one was particularly fraught because, again, that one was like a government issue and an international war story.
Yeah.
All rolled into one. And that was the dawn of like the bot farms being set up by every government.
And this just renewed actually the search for that. No, it's for Malaysia. Sorry, that was for the Malaysian one. Anyway, well, that was quite an interesting comparison. So if anyone is curious, we're gonna link all the sources as well and on YouTube and as well as on our podcast. So go check it out and enjoy. Have fun.
And thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that discussion.
See you next time. Cheers.
Peace.